Welcome to Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am your host, Reggie Key, and today my special guest is Pratik Luhadiya. And put on, and that's this label of genius. So, with that
Mhm.
being said, this being the theme of our whole show, uh, Pratt, do you see yourself as a genius?
I've thought about that. I've thought about it a lot. I think in certain situations I am, and
Mhm.
in certain situations I'm novice. I'm like at the epicenter of starting to learn something new.
Sure.
Um, I thought I was a genius in a lot of the aspects, but when I kind of compare them to probably what may be a subsequent question you may have as to who I redeem as somebody that's genius is somebody who truly is one.
Mhm.
And he has kind of set the bar so high, but has done it unknowingly, right? Has done it to a point of um not rubbing it in my face, not making it evident, but through conversation, just through knowledge sharing, that it becomes that. But those are the times at where I feel that I can keep up a conversation, is where I feel like a genius, right? Then there's times where I just had a newborn, for your audience here. Well, not just had, but she's 7 months now. She does not make me feel like a genius, right? I felt like a genius before she came because I was like, I read up, I know what to do, I know how, did all the daddy classes and all that. And, my wife had prepped me extremely well. But when she's here, it was every day is something new, and it's almost starting over. Yeah, it's throwing it out the window. So I think to put a label on genius, that there's a two-factor fold to it. One is that it's regarded as an egotistical reference to it, right? Like, I'm a genius, and so there's some things you need to listen to, and there's a lot of things that you need to adhere to when I say, right? And
Yeah.
then there's the genius part of it, which could be negative. It could be used in a negative tone, like, yeah, that guy's a genius,
Yeah, genius.
right?
Like, way to go.
Um, where to go, right? It's in one ear and out the other kind of thing with random people, with some people. So you kind of play both sides, because there are some things that my wife will tell me that goes in one ear and out the other, because it goes over my head. I don't know why my daughter's doing something, right? Then there's some things,
Right.
um who I think is a genius, and I'll reveal that if we get to that point, but that he tells me, that I'm like, yeah, no, I got that, and we're gonna keep up. Like, we'll talk, like, we'll keep it going. And it's that's fun. I think that's the fun part for me, is knowing when I'm not, and knowing when I am, and recognizing it
Yeah,
prior to it.
that's
So that way
important.
you don't let the ego get into it where you feel like you know something more than an actual genius. You really know more, but there's, at any point you can be humbled. At any
Yeah,
given point. So genius is a funny word. Like,
it is a funny word.
it's really hard to, yeah.
Most people don't really ascribe themselves to genius, and there's a lot of different reasons why. One is humility. Like, how can I call myself a genius? Like, I know Kanye is quick to call himself a genius, right? Even though he ain't really proven that these days. But there was a documentary done on him called Genius, and it was spelled not in the normal way, but it was spelled phonetically. And there's one point in the documentary, I don't know if you saw it, but this guy Rhymefest, who's another Chicago rapper, as a matter of fact, he penned most of Jesus Walks. And he was like,
Mhm.
Kanye, you can't call yourself that. He was like, that's something that somebody else has to put the label on you. You can't call yourself that. Of course, Kanye was like, I don't agree with that. Right. And there's
Right.
a balance between those two things, because one of my big things that I'm really passionate about, we'll talk about passion later, is when people don't know who they are, then when society inevitably starts to tell you who you are based on what you look like, if you don't know
Yep.
who you are, you start to conform to what somebody else is saying you are, because one, you don't know who you are, and you're trying to fit in. And so you're like, well, if all I see is, as an African American male, if all I saw growing up without knowing who I was all I can be is an athlete, uh, a rapper, a drug dealer, and disrespectful to women, and I don't know who I am, but that's all the media shows me, then I might start to do that. And
Right.
when you start to walk out a label that was never meant for you, that's a form of death. To me, that's a form of, you're not walking in your purpose, you're not walking in your destiny. And that's a form of death because you're just spinning your
Mhm.
wheels and you don't even realize it. I mean,
Yep.
for somebody like Tupac, it literally cost him his life because Tupac wasn't a thug at heart. Tupac was a radical, and Tupac was uh, what's the word I want to say? He was a what's this word? Crap, what
Renaissance
am I
man.
blanking out? He was someone who starts movements. Um, but in the course of him trying to get his platform so that he can move the needle on in society, he I don't know if you know his story, but he's from Baltimore. That's where he was born. And eventually, when he
Mhm.
gets out to the West Coast to try and get his music career off the ground, he ends up like getting pulled over, racially profiled, pulled over by police, and beat up. And he's like dumbfounded, like what just happened? But then he has this idea. He was like, you know what? If y'all gonna treat me like a thug, I'm gonna act like a thug. Now, what I didn't tell you about his time in Baltimore and growing up, he was in a performing arts school. This is where he perfected his craft as a poet. He also studied ballet. Thugs don't do ballet.
Mm.
This
I don't
label
know
that
that one. Yeah.
yeah, this label that he allowed to be put on him and got plastered on his belly, thug life,
Right.
literally cost him his life. That wasn't his lifestyle, but he was trying to take advantage of something that happened to him, and it drove him into an early grave because
Right.
he took on a label that was never meant for him. So that's just a quick example. I didn't even mean to talk about Tupac. That just kind of fell out of my mouth. But when I start to think about the label of genius and what you were saying, one of my early guests said that, hey, you know what? I have zeros and nines. He was like, the nines are things that I'm really good at, but I never give myself a 10 because I'll get complacent and arrogant. He's like, I always leave room for improvement. But the
Mhm.
zeros imply that there's some stuff that I am not a genius on. I am not an expert. Like geniuses
Right.
aren't supposed to be experts at everything. They
Yep.
specialize at least one thing, right? And then the beauty of it is when we come together, realizing that, hey, you got a nine in the area that I have a zero, and we come together as a group. Now we have all this genius that's coming together and completing one another. And instead of competing, we're saying, hey, look, we can do more together than we can apart because you know this and I don't, but I know this and you don't. And we bring it
Right.
together into something cohesive.
Yep.
Um, so I'm gonna get into this next part, which gets into you're already kind of alluding to it. Who do you see as genius?
Um, I see my father as my genius.
I had a feeling.
Um, yeah, it's from um if you look at his entire life, his portfolio, and the things that he's accomplished, I mean, we don't have paper or time enough to talk about everything that he's done. Um, but how he's done it and what at early age that he took these risks to do it, right? Those were the things that made him who he is today and continues to. I mean, he was born as a he was born premature in a
Right?
sense. Um, but he aged so fast that he skipped multiple grades as a young
Wow.
fellow,
Okay.
multiple grades. Um, I mean, he was, running a pharmaceutical company when he was late 20s, early 30s. Then my brother came along. The amount of restraint that he has with, he can, the things that he's accomplished, he can use that as a stepping stone to ego anywhere. He can keep up with anybody in the field, right?
Okay.
But he doesn't. He is very humbled in the sense that he knows his lane and he stays in his lane. When he's asked for his advice, he gives it point blank, succinctly. He never tries to step out and be the Joneses with somebody else. He's
Yeah.
very comfortable in what he is. And for me, that's such a genius move. Being comfortable in what you do. Like for me, I I I have friends that are very successful. And when I was growing up, I would try to keep up with them. There
Yeah.
was a lot of Vegas trips. There was a lot of expenditures on fancy things, on cars and jewelry and stuff like that. And I always came back home and it was humbling. It was humbling to come back home because my dad could have done any one of those things, every one of those things multiple times over, but never did. He was
Okay.
very content in living this very astute, calm, common life. And for him, his entire approach was setting up the next generation for success,
Okay.
setting my brother, myself, my niece and nephew, now my daughter, my sister-in-law, my wife, setting all of them up for success. So he was hoping we don't have to try as hard as he did,
Sure.
because he had made the right choices to do that for us. And all he wants for us to do is to do those type of choices for ours. So to
Mhm.
make the next generation's life that much easier. For me, that's genius. That's
It is
genius.
though.
Given IQ is off the charts. Given IQ is off the charts. Given financial strategy is off the charts. Given world acknowledgement off the charts. Given able to see from 100,000 foot view, but comprehend at 6 feet, 6 foot view is mind blowing for me. It is. It's every day. He's getting older and older, and at that times we start getting worried about, oh my God, we got all these older type of diseases that hit older people. And is he going to get that? Knock on wood. I mean, he is as resilient as he was at 40 years old as he is at now, approaching 76, 77 years old.
Mhm.
I wake up every day, and the funny thing is I walk as if he's walking with me. I think it's something between having Gianna now and being humble for her, doing
Mhm.
things that are with her in the mindset first, is now almost like having my dad walk with me, and just
Yeah.
kind of giving that sort of sense of like, I guess it's twofold. It's me looking up to him and saying, hey, are you proud? You proud? Yeah. Did I make you proud? I did something good today, right? You proud? You proud? And he doesn't tell me that. He doesn't say, hey, I'm proud of you, or this and that. Because for him, just seeing the smile on his face and all that is how he expresses that you're doing good, kid. Just keep at it. Just
Mhm.
keep at it. And that's it. He's never been one for words where he's like, come here, give me a hug, or, this and that and that. It's very, he uses emotions to himself, but he is very genius in the sense of exuding it correctly and not to overdo it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to see some things change as Gianna
Yeah.
gets older, though, because it's something about a grandfather seeing his grandchild grow up and seeing how the lessons learned, the lessons taught to you are now lessons learned that you're teaching to your daughter.
Yeah.
It causes a person to some of that reservation. You're going to see him do some things and hear him say some things that you're like you never thought you would have heard him say before. So just be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I had a feeling the way you kind of began to describe this person before you even revealed who it was. I was like, "Ooh, I think it's his dad," and that's good because Pratt, there's a thing whereby most people think of Albert Einstein when they think of genius, but most people don't look nothing like Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
And there's something about ascribing genius to somebody who you look nothing like, who you have no relationship with, that separates you from the word itself because you're like, well, no, that's what genius looks like. That's what genius sounds like. That's what genius does. I don't do that. Therefore, I'm not a genius. And that's what I'm
Mhm.
here to test. That's what I'm here to challenge because that's not a thing that will allow us to have these labels put on us that we can aspire for greatness, right? um, the fact that those people who I've interviewed who say, "Yeah, I'm a genius," is because more than likely they attribute it to somebody that they can relate to. So the fact that
Mhm.
you're even able to say, "Yeah," in some instances, yes, I am a genius, I think it's partly because you can identify with somebody who you can identify with. That's so important.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's like
Absolutely.
and you mentioned like knowing what your lane is, right? And that's very much a part of what we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes because when you get outside of your lane, just like what I was talking about with Tupac, and the word was left me again. Talking about Tupac, he got outside of his lane, and then it caused him to begin to flounder, and he just kind of self-destructed. And a lot of us are self-destructing because we don't realize what our lane is. What's your element,
Mhm.
right? So I
Right.
have a quote for you that I want that perfectly captures what I'm talking about. All right, you got to let me know if you two things. Have you heard this quote before? And two, how does it hit you when you hear it? All right, as it relates to
Mhm.
James. So you ready?
Ready.
All right, here you go.
I'm ready.
If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
I've never heard that one.
You
I've
need me to say it
never heard
again?
that. Say it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of deep. It make you think. If you
Yeah.
judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
Yeah. I mean, that's super deep. I want to try to process that for a minute.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I want to know what you think about it though. I
yeah,
don't want to tell you what my interpretation of it is and how that
yeah.
fits into what we're talking about. I would like to hear like how that's hitting you, how you're internalizing that, because there's many different ways to interpret it, but they're all right.
Yeah, I think it's about putting an ability on something that has no business even like you're taking a fish out of water and putting it in an element that it doesn't belong, that you're going to continue to do that. The fish is going to think that that's the element it should have been at this entire time, and that if it
Yes.
can't do it, that it's stupid, or that it's not a genius, or that it shouldn't exist.
Yeah. And what happens when a fish stays out of water for too long, anyways?
I mean, it loses oxygen and it'll
It,
perish.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm seeing dying genius all around me, man. And I feel like it's my job to revitalize, resuscitate, and resurrect the dying genius around me, because so many people have either taken themselves out of their element because they have not known what it is, or have allowed somebody else to come along. Because we all have prejudice, right? We all put labels on people to make our world make sense. But once you meet somebody, just like when you discover a person's name, it's your job to pause for a second and say, okay, I had this initial thought about who you were, but I'm going to change that now that I've dialogued with you. Now that I've spoken with you, I have to throw away that label. A lot of people don't do that though. They will
Right.
put that label on you and like, this makes my world make sense. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
And that destroys people, right? And so this fish is getting this label put on it that, hey, you're supposed to be climbing. Somebody in this quote came along and told, I guess it's a sentient fish, came along and told this fish, you're supposed to climb this tree. And this fish believed it because it
Yeah.
forgot where it comes from. It forgot its
Yeah.
element. Fish have
So,
scales, gills, and what is it? Scales, gills, and
yeah.
fins, and they're designed, streamlined to function highly in water. When you
Right.
take that fish out of its element, now you're losing its true destiny. You're losing its true purpose, right? And when people start to compare themselves to the intellect of an Einstein, like physics is probably not your element. So you probably
Right.
shouldn't try to compare your genius to his. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you don't belong and your genius dies, right? You
Yep.
mentioned a couple of things about your dad. I mean, genius is many things. You can have a high IQ, a high GPA, but that does not define everybody's genius. So if somebody is looking like, oh, my IQ score is only whatever it is, and now I don't have genius because it's not a genius intellect. Well,
Mhm.
your genius is likely non-academic, and you need to stop allowing somebody who's created this construct to say and define what you are and what you aren't. You got to know for yourself, right?
Right. So
So
then
the rest,
how would you take the idea of being called a genius, or something close to that, if you're taken out of your element, out of a comfort zone, but are going for something new? And they'll say, you
Mhm.
know what, that's a genius move, right? You're going out of your comfort zone, out of your element, and you're doing something new. Whether it
Yeah.
hits prosperity or not, or success, right? There is the moniker where I say that's a genius move. I
Mhm.
give myself, I made a genius move when I left my previous financial company, and then I came to where I am now. It was a genius move
Mhm.
for me, in the sense of that, one of the big things was affordability of the lifestyle, given now that we have a new being in our family that is going to
Yeah.
take up 99% of our time, 120% of our financials, right? How do we keep up with all of that? Well,
Mhm.
for me, I made the quote unquote genius move, but it was out of my comfort zone. It was getting into something completely new, right?
Yeah.
New people, new tasks, new way to work. Um, but it's paying off, right? It's paying off. So then how do you take the idea of being out of your element? Let's say the fish is created streamlined for water,
Mhm.
but is also told climb that tree, but given the motivation to say it'll be a genius move.
Okay. So I got to move away from the fish though, because this
Yeah.
is where
Well,
talk
no, it's
about,
something more realistic. Yeah.
yeah, this
Something
is where
more
we got to start.
attainable.
We got
Yeah.
to Seuss up in here. Just keep talking about fish, right?
I
Uh,
know.
so we got to start to get into the first component of the three components that are in my book that describe what genius is. And the first component is passion. Your passion will
Mhm.
define your element. However, Pratt, how I have looked at passion as it relates to your genius is different than how most people think of passion. And I got it from a book that I read called The Assignment by Mike Murdoch. So before I give you what Mike Murdoch says defines your passion, let me know, man, what words come to mind when you think of passion?
Creativity,
Mm-hmm.
devotion,
Yes.
um, persistence.
Devotion, persistence. Yeah. Devotion and persistence makes drive, right?
Right.
So check it. The like Einstein is the number one answer when people say, who comes to mind when you think of genius. The number one
Mhm.
answer for when I ask about passion is love. However, Mike Murdoch says something completely opposite when he says, if you want to define your passion, don't focus on what you love, actually focus on what you hate.
Yeah.
And this is why he said that. He said that because, like, Pratt, would you agree that the world is broken? I mean, we don't see fish in trees, so we know something is not fully messed up, but you would agree that the world is kind of broken right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been broken for a while, right?
It's been broken for a
But
while.
as much as the world is broken, it's broken in so many different ways that there's enough brokenness to affect all of us differently.
Mhm.
And that brokenness, when it hits you, when it hits me, it traumatizes us, makes us feel like we don't belong. It makes us feel like a fish out of water. It hurts us, right? And so
Yep.
eventually we try to get over that hurt, that trauma. But when we see it operating and hurting someone else that we love, or even somebody else that we know, then
Yep.
we get triggered like, ooh, I hate that. I hate when I see that happen. And what you may begin to say is, you know what, somebody should do something about that. Reggie, can you do something about that? I'm like, nah, bro, I don't know what to do about that. And if you keep looking around like somebody need to do something about this thing, this brokenness, guess who the somebody is that actually needs to do something about it?
Yourself.
It's you.
Yeah.
And so that hatred of a thing, we're not talking about people, that hatred of a thing, something that's broken in the world that has traumatized you, is what drives you because you're like, whenever I see it, I don't care. And most of the time, Pratt, the things that we focus on, they're not small, they're large. But because we're
Mhm.
driven, like some people have called passion like the gas in your tank, because you're driven to go towards it and do something about it, you won't care how big it is. You're like, no, I don't care if I'm gonna get at this thing a little bit at a time, or if I lop it off in one big fell swoop, I'm gonna get at this thing, and it's large enough
Mhm.
so that it's not gonna be easily it's not gonna easily be done away with. We're gonna always contend with it. And
Yeah.
so if you would have asked the fish, I am going back to the fish. If you would have asked the fish what it hates, it would say, I hate this tree. I hate this tree that's been put in front of me because something doesn't feel right when I keep trying to climb it. I don't feel like I have the mechanisms to do it right. I don't feel like I'm
Right.
in my element. And so when we think about passion from that perspective, now we're getting tied into our destiny, because if you can link your destiny to the thing that you were put on this planet to fix, then now you're gonna have something to get you up in the morning.
Right.
So what do you two questions for you? I always had these pairs. One, what do you think about that? And two, tell me what it is that you hate, Pratt.
I mean, I completely agree. I think that change always starts from within, right? It's always the man or the woman in the mirror. Michael Jackson said in the best, right?
Yeah.
I think the thing that I hate, beyond the things that I can't control is what I
Mm-hmm.
would hate. But I think I hate the concept of what's happening in, I mean, kind of rudimentary, but it's what's going on with politics right now. It's
Ha.
it's trying to understand where moral and ethics and just general comprehension and just general morality, where has it gone? Right? Like if somebody can literally just do and say whatever they want and still continue to gain
A fan.
viewership and
Yeah.
a fan base. Where and how and
How?
how? The more asinine that things are said, it seems to garner more attention and more fan base, right? I mean, Kardashians is a
Now,
prime example of this thing, right? I mean, it's they do nothing, right? It's there's nothing that is systematically being produced out of that kind of family. Yet the amount of lucrativeness, the amount of fanfare that they are getting is unheard of.
it
It's
is.
unheard of, right? You can relate that now with almost any politician that is on one side of the aisle, that they are willing to do and say anything that they can just to abide to a specific base. And that base is so far off from just comprehending what is real world that they
Mhm.
are going to attest it to anything that they feel is within grasp. I don't like this paper. The administration came up with this paper, so I'm going to go ahead and vote for this other piece of paper, right? We're not in charge of that paper. That administration is not in charge of this paper. So I think for me, when they say hate, it's so forefront that right now because of obviously all the stuff that's happened yesterday with the election races and all that. But
Yeah.
I think when we were talking about from a broader aspect of things that I hate, it's being questioned. See now,
Okay.
if I'm a genius in something that I feel that okay, I know what I am talking about. I know what I'm talking about. But if I am questioned to continue to deep dive and deep dive and deep dive into it, that gets under my skin.
Okay.
For me, I think it's a mechanism in that I hope that I say something that it's comprehended the first time, but
Sure.
there are so many words and sentences to follow that up in my head that I feel that I just don't want to get into saying that it
Yeah.
should just be comprehended the first
Should
time I
be should
say
be
it.
evident. Like, why I got to defend myself, right?
Right, right, right. But there are that many times where I feel that are equal to the amount of times where I have confused Ryla, my wife, and she's saying, no, I don't understand that. And I'll say, why don't you understand that? I'm just saying it. And when I explain it, she goes, well, that's what you should have said the first time because you don't obviously know who you're talking to.
No.
Well, I have to the genius kicks in for me is just that was when you're early on like dating and all that. The
Yeah. Yeah.
genius in me kicks in is when I know my audience and who I'm talking to, I can
Yep.
switch up my style. I can adapt to anything and to any group that there is.
Oh,
You know, jokingly, I've always said it, my brother and I, we always say, dude, you can put us in the middle of a bunch of Hasidic Jews and we'll know how to chop it up. We'll know what to say, right? Humor will get us there. Laughter will get us everywhere. We'll do something to break the ice and then we'll be cool.
yeah.
And that's my genius. That's what it's always been. Is that I would find levity in something and I use it and I am constantly on a joke meter. That's just
Told
how it
you,
is. Now
man.
maybe
I was
that's
like,
hiding something, but it is. Like
nah,
that's still like it is.
let's not go too deep and figure out if it's hiding
Yeah.
something. Let's just
Yeah,
take it
yeah,
to
yeah.
because you're jumping ahead of me now because that's your talent. And remember, I
Yeah.
told you that's why I said I want to have you on the show because this levity that you have. I'm like, there's something about this levity that you have, right? And so you keep setting me up, man. It's been pretty cool. Like I knew that you were gonna say your dad. When I asked you what you hated, right before you said it, I was like, he about to say politics. I don't know what it is. You just got me. I'm here with you, man.
Yeah.
Um, so
And honestly, I've really been toying with the idea of I might want to get into something. I might want
yeah,
to
I
throw my
see.
hat into something and push the needle forward in one direction or not. At least then I can see what it really takes and what the obstacles are. Because right now it's very easy seeing it on TV and it's like, oh my God, Stacey Abrams should have won that, right?
Yeah.
Should have been easy, right? Uh, Steve Chris should have won that and beat DeSantis, right? So easy. When we're seeing it from here, we're just not grasping what it is that's behind the scenes, what's pulling the strings. Now, if I got an insight into that, maybe my hatred towards politics or where it is right now would change. It
You
might.
know,
So getting into and agreeing with you, saying it starts with you, that's what triggers me to think like, maybe I should look into something like that. Maybe.
yeah. That I mean, again, you getting ahead because I already see that that's where there may be something new for you down the line. is getting into politics, and maybe you need to get up with our neighbor who's also in politics and do some things. That's something that we're gonna get to in a second. But I want to give you an example just to make sure, and for our viewers to make sure that it's really clear how this thing of defining your passion as it relates to what you hate will set you up to address your destiny, right? So there's this, a couple years back, I was workshopping this idea of genius, and I went to a school. I was invited to a school to talk to 10 little boys. They were like 10 boys in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And they were having some issues. They didn't fit in. They were all put in one class for the entire day. And so the principal was like, hey, look, can you just come and like talk to them every Friday, just chop it up with them, because something needs to like kind of get them in the right mindset. And I'm like, absolutely. Like, that's all I love to do that. So I went and talked with them. And, you know, the first thing I tell them is, hey, look, you know, you're a genius. And they was like, man, dude, who are you talking to? It's like, I think you're in the wrong class.
It's like, you're being condescending to me already? Yeah.
No, it wasn't even that they thought I was being condescending. They knew what I was saying, but they were offended by it because, Pratt, they had gotten used to negative affirmation. And look, you got ADD, all these labels. You got ADHD. You're disruptive in class. You're emotionally disturbed. They got to put you on medication. So when somebody came with a positive affirmation, a positive label, they didn't know how to take it. They were offended. They was like, man, whatever. And then they started roasting one another. They was more comfortable getting called names that beat them down than they were receiving a label that might make them accountable to something higher than where they were. And I understood that, right? And so I said, okay, push past the genius. Y'all don't accept that. That's cool. We'll come back. I said, hey, look, can y'all tell me what you hate though? And it was like, this guy, like, you wanna know what I hate? And it was like, yeah, these two boys, Pratt, that could never get along, that could never agree on anything, all universally at the same time almost told me the same thing, and they thought they ruined my workshop. It was like, we hate school, Mr. Key, now what? And I was like, that's interesting, because that fits into what I'm saying. One, the school system is broken, just like the world is broken. Yeah. Two, it's traumatizing you because you're getting marginalized, being 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders put into one class all day. That's not normal. And so I said, yeah, right. I agree that I can see why you would hate school. But I said, let me take it a step further, though. If I'm telling you that the thing that you hate is the thing that you were meant to fix on this planet, then your confession that you hate school is telling me that you're future educators. And they got real quiet. They was like, oh, snap, what? And I was like, yeah, let me. I was like, you know, they started backing up. Like, I was like, no, come here. Let me tell you like how this works. So I told them, I was like, look, I don't know if you know this, but Pratt, there's like 8 different learning styles that should define the education system. But at most, we only really teach 3. Okay. Right? And so if you don't speak one of those 3 learning styles, then you're going to literally feel like a fish out of water when you're in school. You're going to be like, I don't belong here. I don't fit. Right? And then the school, instead of diversifying how they teach, they just keep coming at these 3 learning styles, and they keep leaving children behind. I don't care what these politicians say. No child left behind. We leaving some children behind, Pratt. And these boys were all being left behind. So this is what I told them. I said, look, the 3 most common learning styles are the left brain thinker, which is the logical mathematical person, the visual learner, and the verbal learner. If you don't learn from one of these 3 ways, but that's all the information, that's all you're getting taught through with this information, then you're gonna feel like I don't get what you're saying right now, and you're gonna feel like you can defend yourself, and you're gonna feel like I hate coming here. And I was like, look, I see in this room alone, I see a kinesthetic learner, somebody who has to move to process information. But whenever you move in the classroom, you're told, hey, sit down, be still. Your learning style is suppressed. I see a right brain thinker, the creative mind, which, by the way, Einstein was a creative mind, and they said that he didn't fit in either. I find that interesting. The person that we call genius now didn't fit in because of the way he thought either, post-secondary and secondary school. But I'm like, the right brain thinker, the creative thinker, you don't fit in because everything is mathematical, everything is logical. And then there's the exploratory learner who has to learn with their hands. But guess what, Pratt? Every time they go to touch something, hey, keep your hands to yourself. Don't touch it.
Yeah, right.
And so now these learning styles are being suppressed. But I told them, if instead of running away from the thing that you hate, you run towards it and know that you've been equipped with this learning style and change that learning style into a teaching style, now you're fixing the problem, because now you're representing a learning style that wasn't there before. Now you're reaching other kinesthetic learners and right brain thinkers that feel marginalized too. Now you're fixing the problem.
Right.
That's like game changing.
Yeah, that's crazy. It is. Yeah.
And not just for the
Absolutely.
school system, but whatever system is in place that pushes people aside and makes them feel like they belong. If everybody has this mindset to be like, all right, I'm gonna take what is supposed to be harming me and actually open the door to express my genius, but then also help people behind me, then now we're starting to get into fixing the world. Because Pratt, I believe that one of the reasons why the world is broken is because not more of us are confident enough to say, I'm a genius, meaning I have something to
Yeah.
contribute that nobody else can contribute.
Right. Because they're being held down, they're being marginalized, they're being
Yeah.
isolated. And
The
yeah.
solution
So
is being pushed out for the sake of the status
right.
quo, which politicians are good for keeping status quos, right? So that being said, when you start focusing on, you already started getting into what I believe your talent is. I just want you to like confess it explicitly. When you can pick
Yeah.
up, when you have something that's broken, Pratt, what do you look for to fix it?
First I'm looking for tools.
Yes.
I need to see what tools are gonna take to fix it.
If you
Yeah.
feel like you have the wherewithal to fix it, you're going to try and find the right tool to address it. And just to kind of fast forward through to the end of the genius equation, your purpose in life is to discover what
Mhm.
your talent is, use it as a tool to address the brokenness of the world that's driving your passion, the thing that you hate.
Yep. Yep.
When you do that, you are unlocking your genius and giving other people permission to unlock theirs too. So you've identified two things, and I have a couple things that I hate too. So I can fit it. You identified two things that you hate. Tell me what your
Yeah.
passion. Tell me what your talent is, rather.
Uh I feel like I'm a jack of all trades, but like a master of none kind of thing.
Okay.
I've had talent with um wordplay, I guess, in a way.
Oh, I didn't know you do wordplay, bro. We can talk. I love wordplay.
Well, freestyling and things like that, right? I was break dancer when I was younger.
Mhm.
I've taken on sort of several parts of my personality on, honed in on them, did what I wanted to do with them, and then kind of moved on to the next thing. Um, what's my true passion, or what's the true talent? Is that what you're gonna ask? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think you already
Like,
said it, bro.
like if I want to define it to one thing, I'm gonna say that I probably belong like on a TV screen, or probably belong like on a comedy show. There are so many times where people that are around me have been in like really sad moods and things like that, and I have lightened the mood a little bit more, right?
Now you're
I
talking.
have the apps to darken the mood as well, but I'm looking more towards that. I have the feeling that my true talent is really making people laugh.
Yeah.
Or if not, just making them giggle or smile, making them feel a little bit lighter. I try to throw a joke at least in every once in a while, even if I'm on with leadership, with
You do, man.
CEOs and stuff like that. Yeah, I try to just break the tension.
Yeah.
I impose a tension. There's no tension. I impose a tension, and then I do a little joke, and it kind of just comes in, and they're like, okay, cool. So now I know how I can talk to this guy, meaning that
Yeah.
person talked to me, and vice versa, seeing how they received the joke, right?
Hmm.
That's probably what I should be doing. I mean, there's a lot of times I've tried casting for TV shows and stuff like that. Reading scripts, writing scripts.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's where my true passion is. If they
I
told me give up your day job and do that, I don't even think twice. I don't even
That's the
think
thing,
twice.
man. Once you get into what your genius is, you won't care. I mean, I know that we have responsibilities as adults and as fathers,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
early on, I remember I used to wouldn't get paid for these workshops. I didn't care because I'm like, this is more important. It's more important that I help people understand that they're a genius and not take on labels that don't define what their destiny is. And I was like, I'll come into your school and I'll do this for free. And after 10 years with this one particular school that's still in Illinois, now that I'm out here, they're finally paying me to do it virtually because they see the
Yeah.
value in it now. And I used to say it, I was like, look, you'll do it until somebody sees your commitment to it and will pay you for
Mhm.
what you were doing for free. And now that's where I am. And it
Yeah.
literally, your gift will literally open doors for you, right? And so I kind of got it that your talent was levity. Uh, and you kind of alluded to it before when you were, talking about your passion.
Yeah.
But here's how this looks for you, Pratt. Like the political scheme is the political landscape is one that's very tense. There's a lot of tension in it. And to even get in on the inside of it, you have to have some type of key to be able to say, I need to see what's going on behind the screen, like you even said. And but to do it in a way that doesn't cause people, because once people put their guard up, it's really hard to get them
Yep.
to share even the simplest of information, right? But you have this ability to disarm people, and I'm sure you use
Yeah.
it on your job a lot.
I
To
use
be
it
able
on
to
myself a
disarm.
lot. I
I
use
mean,
it
you
on
just
myself.
said, yeah, you just said like, hey,
I
look, man, I
if
could
I get
be,
into a dark, yeah, if I get into a dark spot, I kind of just think of something funny I did or say something funny just to kind of get myself out of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can shift cultures, man, because you even said like you dropped me in the middle of a bunch of Hasidic Jews, and I'm gonna be able to pause just quick because I know we on cancel culture. We're not saying anything
Yeah.
about Jews right now. They're negative.
No, not at all.
Just an
Not at all.
example,
I've got a lot of Jewish friends, got no problems with whatever
right?
is going on.
We're just talking
Yeah.
about you going outside of your culture and still being able to navigate and connect with them because of
Yep.
this talent that you have. And so that's a
Yep.
talent that can open many doors for you, which is why you're saying like I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I can pretty much mix it up with anybody. And that's because at the root you have this talent that enables you
Yeah.
to get into places that you normally wouldn't be able to get into, and then to move some things around and get some people to talk, whereas before they might not talk. Now, taking that talent and applying it to, you know, the political thing that you're saying you hate, or even how you say one of your other passions is having to defend yourself, having to have somebody to question who you are. You can even disarm the question by countering it with a joke, and so that can get you into a lot of places to begin to
Mhm.
challenge, like I said, to challenge and shift cultures, so that not just for your to make you feel comfortable, but to make others feel comfortable, to feel like, because there's a lot of people who are turned off by politics right now. I'm one,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
you can turn people back onto a thing that they're like, I'll never be involved with that because of this talent that you have. And so
Yeah.
once you begin to explore that and see how it impacts several different environments that you're in, you're going to begin to see a different aspect of genius come through that you knew
Mhm.
was there already. But it just takes somebody just putting that label on it and turning it a degree or two to say, oh snap, like, okay, I see how I can function in that. And
Yeah.
so in that, Pratt, I don't want to keep your time with getting up to an hour, but in that, I see that's what your genius is. So you've already at the beginning, you said that, yeah, I'm a genius in some areas, but do you see your genius in a different light now from this
I
perspective
do.
of talent and purpose?
I absolutely do. I think when you kind of put the construct together, the equation,
Yeah,
it all points to that, the levity, the humor, the comedic side. That is a passion. That is an element of mine. That is, if you put me in a funeral, I would probably be that fish on a tree. Um, but yeah, essentially that is the passion, and that is what I need to fight this hate for a specific thing, right?
yeah.
So
And it's even gonna come, man, when Gianna gets in school, you're gonna encounter a lot of broken teachers and broken systems. And I just encountered it yesterday, and I had to do some things to kind of dismantle it and make it work for my daughter. But you're going to be able to change some cultures even in the school system, so that your daughter doesn't feel like alienated, or when a teacher doesn't perceive her correctly, you're going to be able to address it in a way that doesn't cause the guard to go up, but that just opens
right.
up people to just learn something and adjust and shift. So I'm looking forward to seeing it in the years to come, man.
Man, me too. I'm hoping things start to get a little more timid in terms of the atmosphere and the environment. I'm hoping the culture kind of starts to loosen its grip a little bit on
Yeah.
everybody,
Hmm.
everything else. Um, it's just there's so made too many stuff that's going on in the world that's worse than the kind of stuff that we're fighting over right now with,
Yeah.
I mean,
Real
hurting
talk.
people's feelings. I mean, it's there's jokes and there's things that are all there, but it's about how you comprehend it, and maybe kind of just take a minute back to just reflect. You're still okay. Your blood's
Yeah,
still pumping.
right.
You're still at your job, right? You're still making a paycheck. You're still providing for you and yours. And, we move on. We move forward in the day.
Yes,
So,
sir. That's perspective. Hey, look, man,
yeah.
I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna let you go. I really feel like I'm not gonna put his name out there. I think if I say my immediate neighbor, you know who I'm talking about. He's been
Yeah,
very
I
involved
do.
in
I
politics.
do.
But eventually, this man's gonna throw his hat in the ring, and when he does, you should be on his campaign. I see you working with him.
I have already told him to run. I have told him I will be his campaign manager. I will be a
See?
running mate, in whatever capacity I can. But I'm a fan of his, and he has opened my eyes towards a lot of things that I was just really numb and just dumb to. He's made me that much smarter about a lot of things. So I'd be on board with whatever he decides to do.
See, see. So just for the sake of the show, man, just say it for me real quick. Like Pratt, you feel like you're a genius, right?
I do now after talking to you. I
All
do
right,
now. Yeah.
my man, my job is done. So with that, I'm gonna
Absolutely.
sign off, man. I appreciate you coming on. This has been Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I have been your genius host, Reggie Key, and this has been my genius guest, Pratik Luhadiya. Pratt is my uncommon cue to see the genius in you.